anxiety about the unknown.
I could hear the steps walking up the stairs. For reals, I was literally hiding under the
black
bed.
eyes, there was no light in
All of a
his
sudden,
eyes.
this huge object with lights was on top of us, and it made no sound.
The anguish.
She's probably just worried about the life that she just left, about maybe the house.
The
It
fear.
wasn't like the house itself cracking, but the floorboards next to us cracking.
Yes, this happened.
So we heard the little footsteps, and my wife told her, "Come on, honey, you can come in," and nobody came in. So I got up, but when I opened the door, there was absolutely no one there. No one there.
Hi, and welcome back to Yes, This Happened. Today, we'll listen to Manuel's testimonial. Manuel experienced some strange paranormal events when he was a kid living in Monterrey, Mexico, and a recent series of unexplainable events while living in Doral, Florida, have raised the question again about hitchhiking spirits.
We moved to Monterrey, Mexico, and we lived in a small rental house. My parents rented a house because it was a temporary situation with my dad's work. And in that house, I remember very, very clearly that things used to happen. You would hear sounds. You would see shadows like moving in your peripheral vision. My brother used to say that I don't know if it's true or not. My brother had this stuffed, I don't remember what character it was some sort of character with an ugly face. And one day he walked into our room because we shared a room, and the stuffed toy was there. He walked into the TV room and the toy was there. So he says that really happened. I don't know if it's true or not. That was one of the things that he says happened to him. Another thing that happened back then was that my younger brother, he was really young, maybe about 5 or 6, says that he remembers that whenever he was in his room, he felt a presence. He felt like someone was there watching him, especially at night. And that he also witnessed these like shadow people or shadows that you see in your, peripheral vision. They're there for a second or two and then, they disappear. He used to sleep with his light on all the time, or a night light at least. But to me, personally, like I said, I would see shadows, I would hear sounds. It was a one-story house, and the kitchen was in the opposite side of the house than the rooms. So in the kitchen, you could actually hear people doing something, preparing the table or something. You could hear the glasses and the utensils. It was really strange and unnerving when we were kids. And I remember my mom, when she would go out, I would be really, really scared to stay home and would usually go with her just to not be left alone at the house. So I would always go to the supermarket to, go with her when she did her nails. I was always with her because I didn't want to stay in the house. That was the main point of it, because I was really, really scared of strange things happening. So that was sort of my childhood in Monterrey. I wouldn't tell my friends about this. I don't remember any of them hearing or seeing anything, but I do remember that as a general rule, I went to their houses. I don't know why or if it was related, but I don't have a lot of memories of my friends at my house. That's really strange now that I say it. And for some reason, I remember it happening mostly in the afternoons. I had that kind of memory of things happening more, when the light changed and it was different.
Manuel kept on with his life, eventually moved out of that house at a young age when his parents moved to the States. He got married and purchased a new house.
And this happened about 10 years ago in Doral, Florida. I was already living in Florida. And we used to live in a house, 2-story house in Doral, nice neighborhood, good neighbors. And we lived there for about I don't know, 4 or 5 years with nothing actually happening or us noticing anything at all. But then we had our daughters. One was about 3 years old, and the other one was 2. And one day, things started just happening. For example, they had a little toy that used to make these animal sounds when you put the little thing in the square, whatever, it would make, the sound of the animal. So that toy would actually start making the sound of the animal by itself without anybody touching it. We had a little box with a lot of toys, and you could hear it in there. And it was like, what's going on, We weren't sure what was going on. We checked it a couple of times, and then we started to ignore it. The skeptic in me would say, obviously it's the batteries, they're running down, and they're this is happening because the batteries are really, really low. Maybe the toy company programmed it to do that, so parents knew, when to change the batteries or something. But I also had a remote-controlled helicopter, and one day it was sitting on a table. It was night. My wife was downstairs, and she started screaming at me because the helicopter had started flying by itself. I mean, it turned on, it turned on the blades, and it started flying by itself, and it was going so high, it was trying to go higher, so it was bumping into the ceiling. So when I went down running, the thing was just bumping into the ceiling without control, and I was able to get a hold of it and turn it off. It was on, so I thought that because the actual helicopter was on, someone had turned something on in the house next door or in the house in the back that had the same frequency, so that's why the helicopter started flying by itself. That was my explanation, So my wife was freaked out. I was trying not to be, but that was another little thing that happened. So after that happened, I must have been a couple of weeks after that. We were sound asleep. It was like 4 a.m, and the light in our room with the fan turns on like full power. Both things, like the light and the fan tool, just going, full blast. So, we wake up. I see the time. It's 4 a.m. It's super weird what's happening. So, I get up and turn it off. My wife is freaked out again. And, she starts saying, too many things are happening, too many strange things. And I said, the same thing as a helicopter. Someone in a house close by has the same fan. They turned it off or they turned it on. And somehow it reached ours and they turned it on. I'm not sure if I was trying to convince her or convince myself. But, we left it at that. It didn't happen again for a while.
Even though Manuel had experienced paranormal events in his childhood, his adult mind tried to find logical explanations for these occurrences. And yes, they could maybe have mundane explanations. The helicopter, the toy, the fan, but the most compelling and frightful, unexplainable experience was yet to come.
One day, we were going to sleep. The girls were already sleeping in their room. It was about 11 p.m. We had the TV on, and we were both, reading a book or on the iPad or something. We were totally awake. I do remember that. We were not slumbering or falling asleep. I was actually sitting up in there on the bed, and we had this laminate floor that you could clearly hear when someone was walking outside our room, and the door was not closed completely. It had 6 inches. It was open 6 inches. So this laminate floor always made a sound when walking to the girls' room or from the girls' room. So that night, we were totally awake watching TV, and we hear the little footsteps coming from their room. It was just, like a set of footsteps walking slowly to the room. And the room had a molding right where the laminate ends on the outside part of the room and where the one on the inside starts. It had a molding. And the molding was not totally glued to the floors. So when you stepped on it, you would hear, like a little screech. So we heard the little footsteps and we hear a little screech and we started saying, Emma, come in. And my wife told her, come on, honey, you can come in, because, usually they would go to our bed and lay down for a while with us. And then we would take him back to their room. And nobody came in. I mean, this only lasted about, 5 to 10 seconds. It was really quick. So I got up and I went to open the door completely so Emma could come in and sleep with us for a while. But when I opened the door, there was absolutely no one there. No one there. And we never heard the footsteps back. So I immediately rushed into my daughter's room, and they were both sound asleep with the covers up. I mean, there was absolutely no way that she had time to run back without us listening and to get in bed and to cover herself up. There was no time for a 3-year-old to do that and be breathing normally, like super relaxed, super asleep. I even touched her. I tried to wake her up. It wasn't her. It wasn't her sister. It was super, super weird. And that's the first time I had no explanation for what had happened. So I went back and I told my wife. She came to the room. She saw them, peacefully and sound asleep. There was no way one of them had, gotten up and up to the door of our room. So we went back to bed. We tried to go to sleep, but the weirdness of it all and the feeling of opening that door and seeing that no one was actually there, when we had very clearly heard those footsteps and that creaking, that the little screeching sound of the molding, which we were super familiar with because it happened every single day we went into the room and we walked through to that part of the house. So, we eventually fell asleep.
Yes, this happened.
Manuel and his wife had just heard little footsteps in the dark. But remember, they were still awake, barely starting their sleep routine. They didn't know something else was waiting for them later that night.
I guess it was a couple of hours later. I was awakened by this voice of a little girl playing with something. Like when they go like, and they're playing with a teddy bear or whatever, and they're making sounds. So I'm thinking, what are they doing? Because outside our room, we had, another big basket with stuffed toys and stuff like that so they could play. So I get up. I don't wake up my wife, but I get up and I open the door. It's total darkness and nobody's there. And that's when I felt chills all over my body. And I said, oh boy, what's happening? Did I just dream this because of what happened earlier? Or did it really happen and I heard it and I woke up? It was disorienting and super weird. So I go with my wife and I wake her up. I shouldn't have done that, but I wake her up. She gets freaked out again. We go see the girls again. They're sound asleep. There's nobody there, So this time we go back to bed and I just can't sleep. And I'm just praying, saying, please don't happen again. Please don't happen again, because I'm going to get really freaked out and really scared. So it didn't happen again that night or any night. It just, nothing ever happened again after that time. We moved out about 2 years ago. I have no idea what the new owners have gone through or not. But nothing ever happened again. And this is not like most of the testimonials you've had on the show, because we didn't have a priest go and do prayers or anything. We just, it just stopped one day, and that was extremely strange.
Were the events Manuel and his family went through the result of a hitchhiking spirit that followed him through his life? Or were these events in Florida related to something else? It is unusual that something like this just stops. But yet again, the experience itself definitely falls into the realm of the unusual. Was this a passing entity? A traveling spirit? We will never know. But Manuel's experience remains with us as proof of what could be paranormal events that transcended their dimension to meet us at ours. What do you think? On the next episode of Yes, This Happened. A troubled home life is fertile ground for an evil entity.
We lived in Colonia del Valle. And as we grew up, my parents started having problems. As the problems started getting bigger between my parents, the apartment, it was heavy. And things started happening. Like, for example, one day we used to live in a 4th floor, and sometimes they would knock 3 times on the window, like tuck, 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 and the window didn't face the street. So there was no way for anybody to knock on the window. And she was so scared. It was a really strong event.
A teenager and her family start experiencing unexplainable events.
Other things happened. We would go to the movies. My sister and I were older. We were teenagers. We would go to the movies. We would come back into the house and someone would turn on the radio full blast as soon as we went into the apartment.
An entity that takes a hold of an entire family.
And I remember my mother called priests 1 or 2 times, and nothing changed after that. I mean, things kept happening, and it came to a point where everything in the house, everything that was happening, started to be almost unbearable for the entire family. My parents started getting divorced, and the sensation in the house was very strong as time progressed, in a negative way, and everything was tense, and I don't know what it was, but it got stronger. One time my parents were talking, having a discussion, more like an argument, and I was about to go into the shower. Well, I got undressed, and you know those times where you start feeling like chills, like right next to my ears, someone says, "Mama, no alcanzo a ver bien." And it was the voice of an old lady.
On the next episode of Yes, This Happened.